Texans today, everybody. I am your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, I have some great news for your Houston Texans as they're gearing up for the 2025 NFL Draft. They've set themselves up pretty nicely to make moves before and after this year's draft. I'll tell you exactly why that's the case, and I'm going to go over some of the top free agents the Texans could target probably before or after this year's draft. First, let's look at the why. And the Texans, Nick Caserio, this front office, has made a lot of financial moves this offseason, one of them being a ton of restructures. Aaron Wilson came in with this little news nugget today. The official contract details for the Denico Autry restructure, they lowered his salary cap from $10.2 million to $6.5 million. Really great news. They already did a restructure with Nico Collins, Azeez Al-Shire. They extended Danielle Hunter. They've made a ton of moves to help out this Texans cap space. And I think as you look at, some of the moves even moving forward, the Laramie Tunsil trade, I think this team has set themselves up nicely to continue to tinker and make some moves here and there and adjust this roster as we get set for the 2025 NFL season. I also saw this, which is a little interesting. I've been following Texans Cap on X, and he's really helped out a ton with trying to figure out the Texans cap space throughout the offseason. Put this out this morning. He said, getting closer. One contract away from having an accurate cap space number for the Houston Texans. Not sure if he means that we're waiting on some contract details for one more contract, or if he knows something else that I don't about the Texans signing another player. Either way, the Texans, last time I checked on Over the Cap, around $15 million per that website. But you never know. Maybe the Texans have something in the works to sign someone else. Furthermore, let's get right into the top free agents. And we have to start at O-line, right? It's the Texans. We have to start on the offensive line. Here's some of the top targets the Texans could look at before or after the draft. And whenever I went through this list, I kind of did a mix of different things. I looked at, one, how good the players are. Two, if they have any connections to this coaching staff. And three, I wanted to see guys who are in the price range for this Texans team and who kind of make sense for them to add. First up, let's talk about the offensive lineman, Brandon Scherff. Not really any connections here, but he is the best interior offensive lineman, in my opinion, left in free agency. He played for Jacksonville last year, 17 games played, 0 sacks allowed, and I know everybody's going to say, he had a huge fight with Azeez Al-Shire after he took out Trevor Lawrence. You really think they can work together on the same team? Yeah, we're all adults here, right? Like, if they're not able to work on the same team, we have a huge problem with these two grown men who can't work on the same team. Brandon Scherff should still be in the running for the Texans if they can't figure out their guard spot, especially during the NFL Draft. Another guy who they could be looking at, David Andrews, former New England Patriot, and this is where the ties come in. We know Nick Caserio loves his former Patriots. David Andrews spent his entire career with New England, played the center spot, was released, and I just got tagged a ton of times. As soon as he got released, yo, Chuggs, another Patriot, I know. He's another Patriot. He's somebody the Texans could look at if they don't like their options at center, which we'll get into in just a moment. And another guy who is a current free agent, Isaiah Wynn, has those ties back to New England as well, was a first-round pick for the Patriots, played this last year in Miami, which another connection there. Mike McDaniel kind of runs a similar offensive scheme to what the Texans want to do with Nick Caley, comes from that West Coast, that Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan tree. Isaiah Wynn could be another option if the Texans need to fill a spot at a guard. Gives you a little bit of a guard tackle flexibility as well. But the biggest question going into 2025 and what Texans fans want to see is a better offensive line. Do we think that's going to be the case, though? Do you think the offensive line will be better or worse in 2025? Go down in the comment section and give me your thoughts. Be honest with me. If you get hit with the YouTube ad break, all good, perfect timing. Scroll on down. Let me know. Will the O-line be better or will they be worse? I'm really hoping they're better. I know the joke's out there. It's hard to be worse than last year because they were a bottom 5 unit, in my opinion, in the NFL last year. I believe in my heart of hearts, the Texans had even a halfway decent offensive line, they would have beaten the Chiefs in the playoffs last year. I'll say it. I think they would have beaten the Chiefs if they had a better offensive line last year. And I think their thought process is they're a defensive team. They're a really good defensive unit. We need to be a better running team. You see that with getting rid of Laremy Tunsil. He's a great pass blocking tackle, a top 5 pass blocking left tackle in the NFL, in my opinion. But that's not what the Texans want to do this year. They want to play more ground and pound. They want to play smash mouth football, and that's not Laremy Tunsil. And I think this offensive line, this new offensive line unit, will reflect that. Maybe they don't have the, top heavy, talent like a Laremy Tunsil at left tackle, but I think D'Amico Ryans doesn't really care as much about that. He wants them to push guys off the line of scrimmage. He wants that movement up front. And like I was saying, talking about center, you have 2 guys who could start at center for you, Jarrett Patterson and Juice Scruggs. And I'm leaning towards Juice Scruggs because, as I just mentioned, he's a better run blocker than Jarrett Patterson. And I think the Texans want to get back to running the football. And it's kind of funny, the whole NFL has kind of come full circle to coming back to the running back, right? Like 4 or 5 years ago, the running back position was nearly dead, right? Like people were like, do we even need a running back? Like this is a passing league. Well, who needs to run the football? Well, the Philadelphia Eagles come in and they, have Saquon Barkley, who runs all over the NFL, gets 2,000 yards, and now people are like, oh yeah, you definitely need a running back. The Texans have a really good one with Joe Mixon. They just need guys up front who can block for him and set up running lanes for him in this year's season for the Houston Texans. And another thing, we all talk about, the second year for CJ Stroud, and I know a lot of people don't like me saying this, but a little bit of a sophomore slump for CJ. We look back to his, maybe arguably his best game of his entire career, right? I think a lot of people will agree with me. That playoff game against the Cleveland Browns, arguably his best game. That game, and I would also say that Bucs comeback his rookie year were 2 of the highlights for me from CJ Stroud. But let's look at that Browns playoff game, right? His play action stats, 5 of 7, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns up against the Browns in that playoff game. You need to run the ball to set up the play action, and CJ Stroud is fantastic when it comes to throwing the ball off play action. So if you can set up the run, be a more balanced team on offense, you can run the ball and throw the football. I think that'll help CJ Stroud in year 3 because we all know he's a superstar waiting to emerge in Houston. We all saw the glimpses of it his rookie year. Hell, even last year when all the chips were down, CJ Stroud really showed up in big moments for this team still. I believe in CJ Stroud. CJ Stroud. Yeah, I really do. I think he can be a top 5 QB in this league. We just need to set up a better offensive line and a more balanced offense in front of CJ Stroud. Now, let's go into another free agency group, this time the wide receivers. And I'm not sure if the Texans add another wide receiver now. They traded for Christian Kirk. They have Nico Collins. I don't see them putting a lot of money towards a receiver. And we kind of saw that with the recent news that came out this week with Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs got paid big time by the New England Patriots. 3 years, $69 million, $26.5 million guaranteed. That's $23 million a year. Nico Collins is getting $24 million. Makes sense why the Texans did not go after a guy like a Stefon Diggs in NFL free agency, because you're not trying to pay that amount to a wide receiver if he's not your wide receiver 1. And if you're paying Stefon Diggs 23, well, Nico sure as hell deserves more than that. He deserves closer to that $30 million a year mark. So I think they're going a little bit cheaper, and then they want to go young. So I think they're definitely going to draft at least 1 or 2 wide receivers in this year's draft. Look out for a guy like an Elijah Moore, though, if they need to fill some holes, right? He's a cheaper, former early round pick, has played with the Jets, has played with the Browns, 2 really bad organizations. He really hasn't had a fair shake. I think he's very talented. Another tie that could be in with the Houston Texans, Nelson Aguilar is another free agent, a little bit older, kind of gives me Robert Woods vibes on the tail end of his career, but can still produce for you if you need. Now, coming up, I have some more free agent targets for you Houston Texans to look at before or after the NFL draft. If they're looking to add some more talent, these are some guys who can help you on the defensive side of the football. Before I do, our friends at Fanatics have you covered. If you want any style of Texans hat, they got you. They have the new logo. They have the flat bills. They have the trucker hats. They have every single hat you'll need over there. Just go to chatsports.com/Texans hats. That will be in the comment section and description of today's video. I do know a lot of these hats are on sale as well. If you want to do a little window shopping, go check them out today. Our friends over at Fanatics, if you use this link, they know that we sent you over there. So go ahead, use that chatsports.com/Texans hats. So go check out all of their hats available for you today. Now, we're going to go to the defensive side of the football. D-line. And the Texans, they've added a lot on the defensive line already in free agency. They've re-signed a lot of guys. But if they're looking for another defensive tackle, another run stuffer, because I don't think they've necessarily filled that Foley Fatukasi role as that true nose tackle, here's 3 guys who you could look at. Obviously, you could just go ahead and re-sign Foley, which he had an injury at the beginning of this offseason that I think will keep him off the shelf. He'll probably be one of those guys if he does sign closer to training camp. Calais Campbell. I know he's old. But until Father Time proves me otherwise, I'm cool with signing Calais Campbell because he has produced magnificently. And he's in his late 30s. Look at these numbers these past 3 years. 5 sacks last year. 6.5 the year before. 5.5 the year before. He is the ageless wonder. So if Calais Campbell wants to come and help the Texans make a little bit of a run, I wouldn't be opposed to that move whatsoever. Or I wouldn't also be opposed to bringing back Foley Fatukasi. I know the numbers aren't amazing, but he's somebody who really showed up for the Texans last year, and he's just a massive mass of a human being there in the center. 6'4", 320 pounds. He's not somebody who's going to, put up a bunch of stats, right? He's not going to, wow you with this the stat sheet. But he's a guy who, he kind of reminds me of, have you ever played pickup basketball and there's a guy who sets just great screens? He's somebody who will be able to help get loose balls. That's Foley Fatukasi. He does all the dirty work that doesn't really show up in the stat sheets. He's somebody, he's going to give you a back screen if you need it. He does all the dirty work so the linebackers can make plays. And speaking of linebackers, that's the next free agent group that we're going to talk about here, as the Texans are pretty well set up at linebacker, right? They have Azeez Al-Shire. Henry To'o kind of stepped up last year. You're hoping you get Christian Harris back after he missed all of 2024. Here are 4 options, though. If you don't like anybody in the draft, here are some guys that you could look at. Kaiser White, I talked about him on a video the other day, that same video where I was talking about Chris Olave. EJ Speed from the Colts, he's still a free agent. You could always bring back Neville Hewitt, who was a special teams ace. I know Frank Ross would absolutely love it. And we talked about connections earlier in the video. A connection to look at. Isaiah Simmons could be another guy that you could look at who he was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. Texans defensive coordinator Matt Burke was with the Arizona Cardinals before he came to the Houston Texans. He has the inside track on Isaiah Simmons. He knows him, and he could be an option for the Texans. If they don't like anybody in the draft, another guy the Texans could go out and add in free agency. And lastly, let's look at the free agent cornerbacks here for the Houston Texans. And I know a lot of people have been saying Asante Samuel Jr. Asante Samuel Jr. He's somebody the Texans should add. I don't know if that'll be the case. I think if the Texans add somebody, it will be a older veteran on a cheaper deal, kind of like they did with Ronald Darby, because they're kind of set, right? They have Kamari Lassiter. They have Derek Stingley as your starting 2 corners. Maybe you need somebody in the nickel, maybe like a Mike Hilton. Maybe with the connections I said earlier, you add somebody like a Stefon Gilmore, former New England Patriot. You're trying to go super team and add, somebody who has ties to the coaching staff, somebody who has ties to the front office. Stefon Gilmore could be that guy. He still has it. I really think he's a good cornerback still in the NFL. Maybe he doesn't want that role of like a, tertiary, cornerback of doesn't get a ton of playing time. But maybe that's the best role for him, right? He's getting up there in age. Maybe he's a guy who can rotate in at the cornerback spot and really help you just have a juggernaut secondary for this Texans team. I wouldn't mind that whatsoever. Stefon Gilmore, another name to look at for this Texans team if you're looking for guys who are tied into the front office and coaching staff. Now, that's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure to hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs if you have any more questions, if you have any more thoughts or concerns. My DMs are always open. And hey, you made it to the end of the video. Why not hit that subscribe button for free Texans content all year long? My promise to you is this, and it always will be this. Hit that subscribe button and give me 1 week. If you don't like the show, you can unsubscribe. But let me prove to you why this is the #1 Texans channel here on YouTube.